Before the leather met flesh, before the canvas tasted blood, before the roar of 10,000 voices became a single deafening prayer, there was silence. And in that silence, a war was already won, not with fists, not with footwork, but with something far more devastating. Words, presence, absolute, unshakable certainty. Muhammad Ali didn't just fight in the ring, he fought in the mind. And by the time the bell rang, his opponents were already broken. This is the story of the war you never saw. Louisville, Kentucky, 1954. A 12-year-old boy named Cassius Clay stands in a boxing gym, tears streaming down his face, fists clenched tight. His bicycle has been stolen. He wants revenge. A police officer named Joe Martin tells him he'd better learn how to fight first. But what Martin doesn't realize is that he's just lit a fuse, not just to a fighter, to a revolution. Because Cassius Clay didn't just learn how to throw punches, he learned something far more dangerous. He learned how to be seen, how to be heard, how to occupy space in a way that made the world stop and stare. His mother had told him he was special, that he was pretty, and he believed her. More than believed her, he turned that belief into armor, into ammunition. By the time he won Olympic gold in Rome in 1960, the world thought they'd witnessed the birth of a champion. They had no idea. They'd witnessed the birth of a myth, and myths don't play by the rules. February 1964. Cassius Clay walks into a room as a boy. He walks out as Muhammad Ali. He sheds his slave name like dead skin. He looks America in the eye and refuses to blink. A black man who will not be humble, who will not bow, who will not whisper when he was born to roar. And in that transformation, he discovers the most potent weapon in human history. Not the sword, not the gun, but the story, the narrative, the absolute control of how the world sees you. Ali understood what philosophers and warriors have known for millennia. Reality is perception.
And perception is a battlefield. If you can control what someone believes about you, you can control what they believe about themselves. And if you can control that, the fight is already over. So he built himself, not just physically, but mythologically. Every word was deliberate, every gesture calculated, every poem a ritual incantation designed to lodge itself in the mind of anyone who heard it. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. His hands can't hit what his eyes can't see. Simple, rhythmic, impossible to forget. By the time you stepped into the ring with him, you were already reciting his scripture. He had colonized your thoughts, and thoughts become actions. Actions become outcomes. Watch him at a press conference. He doesn't just answer questions. He conducts symphonies of chaos. He points, he shouts, he rhymes, he performs. Reporters laugh, thinking it's a show. It is a show, but it's also war. Because while they're laughing, he's installing himself into the collective consciousness, making himself not just a fighter, but an inevitability, a force of nature. And you don't beat forces of nature, you survive them, if you're lucky. I am the greatest. I'm young, I'm handsome, I'm fast, I can't possibly be beat. They called it arrogance, ego, delusion. They were wrong. It was strategy, pure, calculated, psychological domination. Because when you say something with enough conviction, enough repetition, enough unshakable belief, it stops being a claim. It becomes truth. Not just your truth, everyone's truth. And once that happens, once the world accepts your narrative, the fight is already won.
But Ali knew something darker, too. He knew that confidence isn't just about building yourself up. It's about tearing the other man down, about finding the cracks in his armor and driving wedges into them until he shatters from the inside out. And Ali was a master excavator of human fear. Sonny Liston, 1964, the most feared man in boxing, an ex-convict, a mob enforcer, a man with fists like cinder blocks and a stare that made grown men confess to crimes they didn't commit. Unbeatable, unstoppable, a monster. But Ali saw what no one else did. He saw that monsters get tired, that beneath the snarl was a man who was exhausted from being the villain, who wanted rest, who wanted out. So Ali didn't just fight Liston, he hunted him. He showed up at Liston's home at 3 in the morning, honking his horn, screaming that the big ugly bear better wake up because the Louisville Lip was coming. He disrupted Liston's sleep, his peace, his sense of control. And when the weigh-in came, Ali exploded into the room like a hurricane, screaming, flailing, eyes wild with manufactured madness. Liston's team had to hold Ali back, and for just a flicker of a second, you could see it in Liston's eyes. Doubt, confusion, fear. Liston was used to intimidating people. He wasn't used to being the one intimidated. And that shift, that tiny crack in his psychological foundation, was all Ali needed. Because by fight night, Liston wasn't fighting Ali. He was fighting the idea of Ali, the myth, the whirlwind, the thing that wouldn't stop talking, wouldn't stop moving, wouldn't stop being. And in the 7th round, Sonny Liston, the most feared man in boxing, sat on his stool and refused to come out. Not because his body quit, because his mind did. Ali had won the fight 3 days earlier. The rest was just ceremony. Joe Frazier, the warrior, the grinder, Smokin' Joe, who fought like he was trying to dig his way through your soul. Ali should have respected him. Frazier had earned it. But Ali didn't respect opponents. He dissected them. And with Frazier he found the wound, Frazier's pride, his desire to be seen as legitimate, as great. So Ali called him ugly, called him a gorilla, called him the white man's champion, twisted the knife until Frazier bled rage. And rage makes you reckless, rage makes you predictable, rage makes you lose. But it wasn't just cruelty, it was strategy. Ali knew that an angry fighter is a fighter who abandons his plan, who chases, who makes mistakes. And while Frazier was trying to prove Ali wrong, Ali was already 3 steps ahead, turning Frazier's strength into weakness, his pride into his prison. Then came George Foreman, Zaire, 1974, the rumble in the jungle. Foreman was a destroyer, undefeated, a man who had obliterated Joe Frazier in 2 rounds. Each punch sounded like a car crash. He was younger, stronger, more powerful. On paper, Ali had no chance. On paper, this was a death sentence. But Ali didn't fight on paper. He fought in minds. In the weeks before the fight, he told anyone who would listen that Foreman was scared, that George was just a big dumb bully who didn't know how to think. And when reporters asked how he could possibly win, Ali smiled. That smile, that knowing, maddening smile. And he said, "Because I'm already in his head. Right now, this very second, he's thinking about me. Not his training, not his strategy, me." And he was right. Foreman couldn't sleep, couldn't focus, because every time he closed his eyes, he saw Ali, heard Ali, that voice echoing through the chambers of his mind like a ghost he couldn't exorcise. By the time fight night came, Foreman was exhausted, not from training, from thinking, from carrying the weight of Ali's psychological siege. Ali let him punch, let him tire, let him empty his tank swinging at shadows and ropes. And in the 8th round, when Foreman had nothing left, Ali struck. One perfect counter, and the myth of George Foreman collapsed. Because Foreman wasn't fighting Ali, he was fighting the story Ali had written for him. And in that story, there was only one ending. So what was it? What made Ali not just a great fighter, but a psychological architect? Sports psychologists have studied him for decades, and the answer is simple yet profound. Ali understood that fear is a story, and if you can control the story, you control the fear. He didn't just predict victories, he narrated them, with such conviction, such detail, such unshakable certainty that the human mind, wired to believe narratives, had no choice but to accept them as truth. He made his opponents fight his fight before they ever threw a punch. He dictated the terms, the pace, the emotional temperature. And by the time they realized what was happening, it was too late. They were already trapped in his theater, playing roles he'd written for them, and the script always ended the same way. The hands that once floated now tremble. The voice that once roared now whispers. Parkinson's stole his body, but it couldn't touch his legacy. When Muhammad Ali lit the Olympic torch in 1996, the world watched in reverent silence because they understood. This wasn't just a man. This was a monument, a testament to the power of belief. Listen to his words from an old interview, the voice still strong, still certain. I am the greatest. I said that even before I knew I was. That's the secret. Greatness isn't something you become. It's something you declare. And then you spend your life making the world believe it. Not through force, but through the sheer, unrelenting power of your conviction, through the stories you tell, the fears you plant, the myths you build. Muhammad Ali didn't just win fights, he won minds. And in the war before the first bell, in that silent, invisible battlefield where legends are truly forged, he was undefeated. Not because he was the strongest, but because he understood that the strongest weapon isn't made of muscle or bone. It's made of belief, of certainty, of the absolute refusal to accept any reality other than the one you create. The bell rings, the crowd roars, but the fight was already over. It ended the moment you doubted, the moment you believed, the moment you became part of his story. And in that story, there was only ever one champion, the greatest of all time.